Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of the Last Night's Game podcast where we empower the sports curious, and that's you. And today we're going to talk all about the world of football so you can join the conversation as the football season starts. And we have two special people on the podcast today. First up, welcome back, Scott. Scott, podcast guru, a sports guru around here. Scott, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. And today I'm not the most special guest. We have a more specialer guest to have talk to us.
I know, very excited today. So today joining us is the newest member of our Last Night's Game Cultivating Network of Champions team, Maddie. Maddie is our newest full-time person on board, and we have worked together since last summer. She came on as an intern, and I'm so happy to have her on board. And Maddie, you're here a couple of reasons. We were talking, and you are a self-proclaimed maybe not so sporty when it comes to the world of football. Not your fault because you went to a university that didn't have football. We thought you had some great questions and you really wanted to give us kind of a 101. We talked through a 101 of the world of sports. So welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you. We were joking on the intro, like we only hire brunettes around here if you're watching us on YouTube. So let's just dive right in because I know we try to keep this short and sweet for our listeners. Let's talk about the world of football. Like Maddie, give us a nagging question that you have about football that we can start us off with.
I think the first question is the most obvious. What are the positions? What do they mean?
That's a very simple way to start. Football's made everything incredibly complicated, unfortunately. So many rules, a lot of different position types. Unlike soccer and maybe basketball, there's more people on the field. There's 11 players on each side. And we'll start at the most basic is the quarterback. He's the guy who has the ball on offense. He is the captain of the offense, the leader. If you like basketball, he would be the point guard. So that's a comparison. I know you had some basketball in your background in college, so that he's basically the point guard. And then we have the trusty offensive linemen. They are the big guys in front of the quarterback. Their job is to protect him at all costs, do whatever they can to protect him. And they're the quarterback's best friends. And then from there, we'll go back.
Is that why you see quarterbacks at like the holiday time always buy great presents for their offensive line because they are responsible for protecting them and making sure that they actually are like this star that they are.
Yes, you got to keep the linemen happy, and they're kind of the unsung heroes of the team. You only really know about them when they mess up, so it's nice to give them something nice during the holidays. Thank them for keeping you alive. And then from there, we'll go behind the quarterback, which is where the running back will line up. So if you're watching the game, there'll be one guy behind the quarterback usually. And that's the running back. His job is basically to run the ball. If they don't want to pass the ball, they'll run the ball, usually hand off to him, either direction. And sometimes you'll see him block as well for the quarterback. So there's a lot of things they do. They actually started catching the ball a lot too now. So they're more versatile. It's kind of transitioned.
And someone we might talk about, maybe you can give us some players in those positions. Saquon Barkley is one you're going to hear, or you may have heard a lot about from the Philadelphia Eagles. And we talked in a previous podcast about how he catches the ball. So he might be a good pick for fantasy football.
If you're doing fantasy football, Saquon Barkley, Super Bowl champion, he is a good pick. And then kind of from there, we'll go to a position that a lot of people have found out about in the past 2 years, the tight end. There's a lot of new football fans, maybe Taylor Swift fans, that tight end is not only, a position, but also maybe his body parts are his tight end. He's got a tight end. So that's a good way to remember that. And they line up on the end of the offensive linemen. So they're a little bit smaller, more athletic offensive linemen is a way to put it, who can catch. And then we have the receivers. So they line up wide. If you're watching the game, they're going to be the guys on the outside. They're the athletic ones. They're getting the ball past them, catching and scoring. And an example of that would be like a Jamar Chase, who, if you've watched quarterback, he's Joe Burrow's receiver. They played together in college. He's a good name to know. So if you're watching the game, Jamar Chase would be your wide receiver.
Now, on the defensive side, can you just give us the flip side? If we're picturing them lined up, right? We've got our offensive line, we have a quarterback behind them, running back, we've got our tight ends, then we have our receivers. Who's on the other side of them on the defensive side?
So defensive side, directly in front of the offensive line, would be the defensive line. And their job is basically to get to the quarterback, stop a running back from running, just to disrupt things. And someone there would be a TJ Watt, who just signed the largest contract in NFL history. Max Crosby, who we had in our tattoo. Post. So he's a defensive lineman, so that's a good way to remember him. And then right behind them would be the linebacker, not a linebacker, but a linebacker. And they're right behind the defensive line, and their job, they do everything. They're usually like the captain of the defense. They would be the quarterback of the defense. They're stopping the run, guarding people in pass routes. They're all over the place. Kind of wild animals, if you will. And then on the outside with the wide receivers, guys out wide would be your cornerbacks. And they're basically just guarding the wide receiver. That's kind of their sole responsibility. And a lot of people think that's the toughest job in football because you're having to guard these athletic guys. And one disadvantage you have on defense is you don't know the play. Offense knows the play, so defensive backs have to react on a stop of a dime on routes, running, stopping the run. Like that's really one of the hardest positions in sports.
Is there a notable safety that
a notable cornerback? I'm trying to think
cornerback
maybe of
oh, sorry,
someone. Yeah, we didn't get
I
to
got ahead of
safety yet.
myself.
Yeah, cornerback. I'm just drawing a blank right now on anyone that would be like super notable at the moment.
Got it.
So we'll go to safety and maybe we'll work back at the end. And then basically the last line of defense, the guy you'll see very far away from the line of scrimmage, which is where the ball is, would be the safety. And that's, the name implies everything. That's the last line of defense. Their job is to keep everything in front of them. And if it gets behind them, it's probably a touchdown. So if your cornerback doesn't guard Jamar Chase, who's a wide receiver, he gets the ball deep and the safety's not there, it's probably a touchdown.
I Googled cornerback, and you may or may not, you know him, but audience may not. Sauce Gardner.
Okay, Sauce Gardner, he just signed a massive contract with the Jets. Sole responsibility basically to guard wide receivers and sometimes stop the run.
Okay.
Do we have any questions? I know that was a lot to ramble on about.
Pretty good.
So when I think this is one we kind of talked about. Talk to us a little bit about the play calling, because the quarterback's yelling I think there's 2 helmets that can have communication with the coaches. So talk to us just a little, give us a real quick 101 on like how a play happens. Why are we yelling at people? Why are we yelling Omaha? Like I want to understand all that. And I know we have an old podcast, so tune into that if you want for the actual a little bit more in depth on play calling, but like give us a 101 on play calling.
So the basics where it starts is the quarterback has an earpiece that goes to his offensive coordinator or his head coach, whoever's calling the plays, that the coach will look at the play sheet depending on down or distance or, what's required. They will call a certain play. It goes to the quarterback's headset. He gets the play, processes what it is, because if you go back and listen to our play calling podcast, a lot of these play calls are just ridiculously long for no reason and complicated. And then he conveys that to his offensive line, his running back, and his wide receivers. A lot of NFL teams, they'll huddle up. So when you see before the play, they're all in like a circle or they're all next to each other. That's called a huddle. And that's where he's yelling the plays and telling everyone has a responsibility that'll be dictated in the play.
And so give us a quick example of like what a play might sound like. And then like you said, every player has sort of an indicator.
Yes.
So make up some words if you will. North, south.
Let's see.
Garbage can. I feel like though I'm trying to remember the one you tried to give me before.
That was ridiculously long. I don't think we have time for that one. I don't know. It would be like trips left, and then so trips would be 3 wide receivers to one side. So if receivers heard trips left, they would be on the left side of the line, 3 guys bunched up. So that's their indicator. And then an offensive line call might be some word like that starts with an R and L that will tell them to block right or left or where the protection would be. So something of that nature.
Interesting. Okay. So, and if these plays, for example, are like 14 words long, and they're all gibberish, like they mean nothing. There's no flow to them. It's not like some sort of beautiful sentence or poem.
And there's no like universal, like it's got to be this. Each coach, each quarterback has things they like to say and indicators that make it easy for some guys who are not necessarily good at remembering all these plays. They've got to keep it simple and make sure they know it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why you have these flip chart things on their wrist, because they're referencing those things. And it's just, to me, it's fascinating when you really start to listen to this. And if you can hear, if they've mic'd them really well, the field really well, to hear these guys shouting over a crowd, hoping that the guy at the end, the cornerback, so wide receivers, depending on which one, I guess depending on which one you are,
Yeah.
Why don't the defensive line shout?
One more point, and then I'll get to defense. And sometimes you'll see where they don't huddle up, and that's called a no huddle, and they're just using hand signals. Maybe in the last 2 minutes of a quarter or a game where they have to speed up and they don't have time to huddle up, or it's really loud and you can't hear anything. So you'll see games where no one can hear anything and all you can see is hand signals, and they all mean something different. You'll see pistols and points and like rockets and stuff. It's that's a science as well. So if you see that, that's called a no huddle, and that's usually you can't hear anything or you have to go fast. And the advantage of going fast is you get the defense tired. So there's strategy behind that as well. So there's just a lot of different strategy. And there's a green dot on quarterback has the headpiece where he's calling the play, and then the linebacker typically would be the captain of the defense. He's got a green dot on his helmet. He has a headset to the defensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator is calling the plays into the linebacker. And he's usually yelling at the defensive line or hand signals to the cornerbacks and safeties who they probably can't hear him. So he's doing what the quarterback does, but on the defense. And if you see him, like if you watch a play and you see like a linebacker run up and tap one of the defensive linemen, he's lined up wrong and he's got to get in the right gap. So like he's the smart one on the defense usually.
Going, get it together.
Yes.
That was really interesting. Like I said, to me, as you learn more and more, like the game becomes so much more interesting because there are so many stops and starts to a game that
Yes.
if you don't know what's going on, it's
confusing.
boring.
Yes.
I mean, unless you like needed like a commercial break. But like, you know, one of the questions we talked about before this was like, talk to us a little bit about like why we were stopping and starting, because that's one of the complaints when I talk to my friends from overseas about American football is it's so slow. Like, okay, hurry, stop, start, start. And so give us a little bit around that.
Yeah, and I mean, they're used to rugby, which there's very few stops and it's just constantly going, or soccer, there's very few stops. So a football game can sometimes get 4 to 5 hours with commercials and stoppages. And typically stoppages we're going to have for injuries. If you pass the ball and drop it, which would be an incomplete pass, the clock stops. If you go out of bounds, usually the clock's going to stop. The clock can stop for challenges where, you know, a coach thinks the officials got the call wrong. That can stop the clock as well. And then we have a 2-minute warning on the first half and the second half at the end of the game where the clock stops. It's basically a timeout for the teams to kind of get strategy for that last 2 minutes, where you probably are using a no huddle and just hand signals because you're trying to go fast. There's a lot. Yes.
So we kind of already threw out words like touchdown and stuff. So I was kind of wondering, can we get a breakdown on how the teams score points?
That's a good one too, because unlike, you know, soccer's every goal is 1 point or one, you know, or basketball, 2 points, 3 points. That's all you have. So with football, a touchdown is when the player has the ball and crosses the goal line. And whenever that happens, that's going to be 6 points. And then from there, you have an extra point, which in the NFL is it's kicked from the 15-yard line, which makes it like a 32-yard field goal, basically. And that would be worth 2 points if they make it. And then it's kind of a strategy. You also have the option to go for 2. So in that case, you have the offense has the ball on the 2-yard line and they're trying to score again, which would be a touchdown technically, but it's only worth 2 points. So if you're successful on those, it would be a total of 7. And then if you kick the ball, which typically means the defense stopped you from scoring a touchdown, that would be 3 points if you make it. So you've got 6 points, 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point.
And then throw in a safety. What's a safety?
A safety is when the defense tackles the ball carrier, the offense in their own end zone. So it is essentially a safety is a defensive touchdown or defensive stop in the end zone, and that's worth 2 points.
So they would tackle, like, let's say the quarterback
tackled
in the end zone,
yes.
And then it's 2 points because
I think
it's confusing.
A Saturday Night Live skit where they went through this, like it was like the George Washington, like Revolutionary War, and he's trying to explain all this, and everyone's just like, "What are you talking about?"
It's what's the law, like the old skit, like the who's on first. It feels exactly like that. So yeah, just it's a great schooling in math.
Yes,
because nothing is the same.
Sports math.
We determined Scott's really good at sports math.
Not real math. Basically, 7 points and 3 points is what you need to know. 7 for a touchdown, 3 for a field goal.
And those tend to be the most, and that one extra point. But they very rarely miss that extra point. Which, I mean, when you're kicking,
they did move it back a few years ago, and it has resulted in more misses because it was kind of too automatic, and the NFL didn't want people checking out and going to the restroom after a touchdown. So
Makes
they
sense.
moved it back a bit to make it more viewer friendly, I guess.
Well, Maddie, as we get close to our time, wrap us up with one of your questions that's burning in your mind.
Okay, I think maybe what is the difference between college and NFL?
They're both football, which
True.
is the basics. There is just a few small differences that you may or may not notice. The ball is different, actually. So college football is going to be maybe a little bit smaller, and it has white stripes on the ends, or like on the ball, so you can see the ball rotating.
Oh, so that's why you have the ones like the line with this.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, that's the
laces. Okay.
typical ball you see,
didn't
but the
know that.
NFL ball does not have. It's a little bit bigger and does not have the lines. So it's just like a blank leather sack.
And it just
For
has the
better sure.
laces.
Yeah, and good example of this is Jamar Chase, who we mentioned earlier. When he first came into the NFL, he was having trouble catching the ball because it did not have the white lines to see the rotation. So it is a little bit more different. So more challenging. They have to get used to that when coming in. Let's see. Overtime rules. We can jump into that. College overtime. You start at the 25 and you go in. So you're not playing the full field. You're just doing 25 in, and then NFL, you're playing the full field. So that's a big difference. Let's see.
And when you
Target
say 25 in,
25-yard line.
is
So the
25-yard
offense,
line in.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The offense is facing their touchdown, and that's a big difference. We can get into targeting real quick, knock something
Please.
out. The basics. Targeting was put in to prevent. It was basically for player safety, prevent people from using their heads as weapons with helmets, because the helmets are they hurt a lot when you get hit with them, and that's the main cause of concussions. So targeting is when you launch yourself with your head at someone who's trying to catch the ball, or the quarterback, or the running back. And in college, targeting results in a 15-yard penalty, and the player is ejected, and which means they miss the first quarter of the next game. So they get ejected, they're out the next game. And if you're a senior and that's your last game, or if it's second to last game, then you're going to miss a quarter. In NFL, targeting is a 15-yard penalty, and it's not an automatic ejection. So it's kind of depending on the severity of what you do, but you can't be ejected.
And
So
targeting,
there's a few different things between games you can point out pretty easily.
When I was saying in targeting, they use the verbiage like a defenseless player. So it's like you kind of mentioned someone going up for a catch, the quarterback throwing the ball. It's like they're defenseless. They can't. That seems to be the word you hear a lot is defenseless.
Yes. So defenseless. It's just basically player safety to try to prevent them from hurting themselves.
I have one quick question as we close out. The word you hear a lot, or the phrase you hear a lot, is red zone.
Yes.
We have the red zone on YouTube TV now that everyone watches. Talk to us about the red zone real quick.
Okay. Real quick. Red zone on YouTube TV. It's a whip around. They're showing highlights of teams scoring, basically big impact plays on Sundays. So it's continuous. And Scott Hansen is going 8 hours nonstop. It's one of the most incredible things you'll ever watch, knowing that this one guy is not taking commercial breaks, doesn't go to the bathroom, nothing. So that's the TV version. Red zone in football is going to be the 20-yard line and towards the touchdown. And it's called the red zone because the offense is expected to score from there. And defensively, it's actually a little bit better because everything's so combined and condensed that the offense doesn't have that much room to operate. So you're supposed to score on offense, but it's actually a little bit easier for the defense because everything's so condensed.
Yeah. And so you'll hear a lot in conversation about their red zone conversion, that kind of stuff. And that's when they get into that red zone, when they get into the hot zone, essentially.
Yes.
Can they execute?
Can they execute? Yes. And that's where the good teams who win, that's where they execute, is the red zone. That's the big difference between someone who's winning a lot of games and not winning a lot of games.
Well, thank you, Scott, for giving us the 101. I have so many questions, so I feel like we could do this again because I'm sure Maddie shakes her head too. You give us such good insights, and I appreciate you being that person we can ask all those questions to. That's how I know what I know about sports, because that's what I've done for those who don't know, Scott's my brother, and what I've done for our entire lives. So thank you, Scott, for sharing your wisdom. Thanks, Maddie, for joining us, for making your debut on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you, Scott.
Hopefully we learned something.
Well, keep up with us at lastnightsgame.com, and thanks for sharing your wisdom, and go football.
Go football.
Go football.